Hi and welcome to the JavaScript crash course part 1. In this crash course we will be discussing variables. JavaScript JS for short is a full-fledged dynamic programming language that can add interactivity to a website. It was invented by Brendan Eich, co-founder of the Mozilla project, the Mozilla Foundation and the Mozilla Corporation. JavaScript is versatile and beginner friendly. With more experience you will be able to create games, animated 2D and 3D graphics, comprehensive database driven apps and much more. JavaScript itself is relatively compact yet very flexible. Developers have written a variety of tools on top of the core JavaScript language, unlocking a vast amount of functionality with minimum effort. Okay, to give you a better understanding of JavaScript working, let's explain some of the core features of the language. It's worth noting that these features are common to all programming languages. If you mastered these fundamentals, you have a head start on coding in other languages too. Okay, let's get started with variables. Variables are just containers that store values. So it's like a cabinet or a drawer in your living room or bedroom where you can store your mobile phone or your other accessories like a notebook, ball pen, etc. You start by declaring a variable with the var, less recommended. Dive deeper for the explanation, or let the keyword followed by the name you give to the variable. So let equal space my variable. Note that a semicolon at the end of a line indicates where a statement ends. It is only required when you need to separate statements on a single line. However, some people believe it's a good practice to have semicolons at the end of each statement. There are other rules for when you should and shouldn't use semicolons. For more details, see your guide to semicolons in JavaScript. Another important note is that you can name a variable nearly anything, but there are some restrictions. You can see this section about naming rules as well. If you are unsure, you can check your variable name to see if it's valid. JavaScript is a case-sensitive language. This means my variables is not same as my variables. Note the capital V in the first one. If you have problem in your code, check the case. For more details about the difference between var and let, see the difference between var and let, and you can Google it as well. So let's get started. There are two ways you can practice this code on your computer. One is to go into Chrome, More Tools and Developer Tools, and here you will see the console tab. So you can clear this up and you can practice here. So for example, I can declare a variable called my variable right here in my browser, and this variable has been defined. Another way is to use a HTML file. Another way is you can create a project file. I already have, I think, JavaScript folder, so I can create a folder called crash course, and I can give it permissions, so it's totally read writable. Let's go into crash course, and I'm going to create part1.html file. And within this HTML file you can add a script tag, and within that script tag you can write your own JavaScript like my variable. So if you save this file and you go into your projects directory, projects JavaScript crash course part1.html, and open it in browser, you won't see anything because we have just defined the variable but we haven't assigned it any value or haven't written to the screen. Okay, after declaring a variable you can give it a value. For example, my variable is equal to Bob. So let's do it in the browser. My variable equals and single quote Bob. Okay, now you see I have Bob stored in this variable. So my variable is just a container in your computer's memory. where the computer has stored a string called Bob, and it's there. And also you can do both these operations on the same line. So you can define the variable and assign the string to that variable in the one line. So I can do this as well. My variable 2 equals Tom. So we can do that as well. This is also permissible. You retrieve the value by calling the variable name. So if I type in my variable, I get Bob. If I type my variable 2, I get Tom. So after assigning a value to a variable, you can change it later in the code. So let's say you have defined a variable, let my variable equals Bob, but later you can assign Steve to the same variable. So I can do my variable equals Steve as well. So if I retrieve my variable now, I get Steve, because Steve has replaced Bob in the computer's memory. And that was about variables, strings. Okay, let's look at how many type of variables you have in JavaScript. The first one is string. This is a sequence of text known as string. To signify that the value is a string, enclose it in single quote marks. So let my variables equal to Bob. We have already seen that. The second one is number. This is a number. Numbers don't have quotes around them. So to define a number variable, we can use let my variable number equals 10. As you can see, we don't have a single quote or double quote around that, and if I get the value of my variable number, I get 10. The third one is Boolean. Boolean only stores true or false. So if I declare a variable, my variable bool equals true, it is now defined as a Boolean variable. So if I get the value, I get true. I can set it to false now, and now it holds false. As you can see, when I got the value, retrieved the value of the variable, I got false. Okay, the fourth one is array. This is a structure that allows you to store multiple values in a single reference. So to define an array, we can simply do is let's create the console so you can see what's going on here. Okay, let my var array equals, it starts with a square bracket, and here I can add different type of variables within an array. Steve, and at the end I'm storing 10. So now this array is stored in the computer's memory. If I want to retrieve a value on index 1, I just need to say my var array 0 and I get 1. If I want to get the value on index 1, I get Bob, and on third one I have 10, and on second one I have Steve. So in array in JavaScript, you can store different type of data types in the same array, but this isn't possible in Java or some other languages. The last and the fifth one is object. This can be anything. Everything in JavaScript is an object and can be stored in a variable. Keep this in mind as you learn. So we can define an object like let my var object equals document.querySelector h1. For this we can do is we can say let my var obj equals document.querySelector and can say h1, and this is our object, and all of the above examples are objects too. So basically above all, you can console.log to any variables you want. My var obj, it doesn't have anything, so it's null because we don't have an h1 tag, HTML tag on our web page, so it's null. But if we do it here, in a part 1 HTML program, I can say hello world, and here I can say obj equals document dot get document dot query selector h1, and if I try to console.log this here and run the program, so you see I have got hello world. But let's see what's in the console. If I refresh it, I get hello world. It is the console.log and it's printing the contents of the h1 tag. So basically these are the main data types in JavaScript. So why do we need variables? Really, variables are necessary to do anything interesting in programming. If values couldn't change, then you couldn't do anything dynamic, like personalize a greeting message or change an image displayed in an image gallery. I hope that you have liked this video. If you need any help, you can contact me at umehmood@gmail.com, visit my LinkedIn address or my Twitter handle. This is a very short crash course of 4 or 5 parts, and this was part 1. So let's meet in part 2 in next few days. Thank you very much.